what they need to ask, like what's going to be the offer so they can make money?
Fernando, let me share with you three mathematical formulas that experienced investors are going to use out there. Two of them, you can probably read them in articles, and the third one is the S Gant special. Okay.
Welcome everyone to this new edition of our holographic podcast or HoloCast. And today I have my good friend, Mr. S Gant. Eddie, welcome to our show.
Well, thank you, Fernando. I appreciate you having me today.
Thank you. So please tell me what or who is JetLending?
Okay. JetLending is one of our companies here in Houston. We founded the company January 1 of 2004. So we've been in business 20 years and 17 days now. So we've had a good run. JetLending is what most people would refer to as a hard money lender. We prefer the term asset-based lender, but this is an industry term, hard money lending. What we do is we specialize in providing capital, providing funding, providing lending services to real estate investors, and real estate investors only. And typically our clients are buying single family homes for either fix and flip for relatively short time frames for the intent to make a profit, or they're buying single family residences to buy and hold as rental property, or they're buying small apartments or some type of commercial property with the intent to, again, either resell the property fairly quickly for profit, or to hold the property long term as a rental. And the third type of property would be land. We have a lot of investors that buy land either for splitting it up, what we call chopping it up, or for long-term hold. So, but the key here is we loan on investment properties and investment properties only.
Amazing. Now, who is S Gant?
Well, I'm an old man in Houston, I guess you'd say, but I've been doing this bought my first investment property in 1999. So I'm about 26 years into this now, but my degree is in civil engineering. I came to Texas from Mississippi at the old age of 20. Got in the power plant building business. I was in that for a while, ended up in Houston on the ship channel, worked a long time for a very large materials supplier and manufacturer to the construction industry. But just your ordinary Joe that's got a little bit of experience flipping houses. I got a little bit of experience in now lending to the real estate investor community. Pretty easy to find. We're right here in North Houston, and we're fairly well known in our little industry.
We have been watching a lot of TV shows about flipping, and you mentioned hard money lending. What is that? What's hard money lending?
Well, the hard money lending gets its name from not because it's hard to get, but it's because the main loan parameters are based off the value of the property that the investor is purchasing. And the industry refers to the hard value of the asset. So hard money lending is normally faster. Not normally, it is faster than conventional methods. It's usually a little bit higher priced due to the speed that you're able to get it. And most investors, if they're buying a property, if they're buying an investment property, and they're getting a pretty sizable discount on that property from the seller, and it could be 20%, 30%, 40% discount. In order to get those kinds of deals, the real estate investor normally has to promise speed and a speedy closing, a fast closing. Well, that investor normally cannot go the normal routes. That investor may be very strong financially, may have great credit, may be bankable, as we like to say, but the bank cannot move at the speed that the investor has to move to purchase that property at that discount. So they would normally look elsewhere, and most commonly they're going to go to a hard money lender, and again, also called asset-based lender, due to the speed that the hard money lender, asset-based lender can move at. You know, we're here not necessarily because investors cannot get bank financing. They cannot get bank financing in the timeliness that they need, that they promise the seller. That's what hard money lending is all about, is loaning on the asset-based value of that property at a particularly quick speed.
Nice. So I have a couple of questions here from our audience. And one of the questions is, how do you crunch your numbers? So let's say I want a loan, I want one of your hard money lendings for a short-term rental. What numbers will you be looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me, the best way to explain it, let me just go through an example, if I can get the numbers right in my head here. Let's say the investor is buying a property. Let's start with a single family property, single family residence. That's where most people start. It's more simple. Let's say the after repaired value, that means the value of that property fixed up, okay, put back in top-notch mint condition, we like to say. Let's say that value, and we call that ARV, after repaired value. It's an industry term that you hear, you know, every 2 seconds in our industry. Let's say that number is 300,000. Would be a very real number in Texas, in Houston, Texas. We would first take 70% of that number. 70% of 300 is 210,000. That would be the maximum loan at any time for that property from a hard money lender from JetLending. All right, 70% of 300 is 210. But let's say that property needs 50,000 in rehab. It needs 50,000 in new roof, new central air, new flooring, new paint. You redo the bathrooms, redo the kitchen. 50,000. So we would take 50,000 off of a 210, so that's 160. That would be JetLending's maximum loan at acquisition, at the closing of the purchase of the property by the real estate investor. So now I'm giving you two numbers, 160 and 210. 160 is our maximum loan that we would extend at closing to purchase that particular property. Then we would hold the 50,000 for the real estate investor in an escrow account and advance that to the real estate investor as the real estate investor improves that property up to, you know, its mint condition, its fully rehab condition. Hopefully that was clear to everybody.
You know, it's very clear. I heard short-term rentals and long-term rentals and flipping homes. What's the difference?
I'm sorry, I did not fully understand that question.
Yeah, what's the difference between flipping a home and a short-term rental and a long-term rental?
Okay. Well, the investor, if they're going to flip it, you know, that goes just like I just described. If they're going to hold it, okay, as a rental, now we divide that rental pool into two categories, short-term and long-term rentals. The financing to hold that asset long-term, those two, they're very similar. They're not exactly similar, but for this discussion, the financing for that is very similar to each other. But what they're normally going to do is they can go through JetLending to get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, okay? We call these DSCR loans, debt service coverage ratio loans. That's a term you didn't hear 4 or 5 years ago, but they're very, very prominent out there now. The investor would hopefully be approved for that loan to be able to hold that asset long term. Then what they're basically going to be looking at is their monthly debt service, which would be their payment on that loan, plus taxes, plus insurance, plus, you know, some other variables of vacancy and maintenance, but they're going to be measuring their cash flow. Okay. Now, short-term rental, long-term rental, we have both. We have a lot of long-term rentals here. We have a few short-term rentals. Short-term rentals, I'm not going to get into that whole discussion of, it's just take forever here to discuss the ins and outs of that, but it's a prominent industry. It's, in my opinion, in some areas, somewhat saturated. Most of my rentals are in the long term. They're more steady. They seem to stay occupied long term. But what you're going to be doing is measuring your cash flow. But really, at the end of the day, whether you're short-term rental or long-term rental, the real estate investor's largest area of profit is long-term appreciation. And with a calculator and a pen in 20 seconds, I can prove it to you. So I'm going to advise anybody and everybody who wants to buy properties to hold as rentals, whether it's short-term or long-term, keep this in mind. If your cash flow is breaking even, you're still making money. And the reason you're making money is because the long-term appreciation of the asset, whether you call it 3%, 4%, 5%, 6%, or the 15 to 18% that we were getting per year in 2019 and 2020 and 2021, your net gain over time is huge. And that's the number one reason that you get into rental property in my business, in my opinion. But you do measure that cash flow so you can pay your bills. What's a good cash flow? Some people like breaking even in $100. Others, if they're not getting $500 to $700 cash flow per month, they're not happy with it. But I will tell you this, anything positive in cash flow is a good thing, because remember, you're going to make a tremendous amount of your real profit over time as the asset appreciates. And keep in mind, you're paying your debt on that mortgage, that long-term mortgage, you're paying it down. I know I got a lot of long-winded, but that's a very important concept to remember.
That is fascinating. So now I have another questions. What people watching this podcast, what kind of properties they will be looking for? What kind of properties they need to buy?
Yeah. If you're brand new, I'm going to highly recommend you don't go buy an apartment complex. You don't go buy a commercial building. You don't go buy 100 acres of land with the intent to chop it up. Let's start simple. Let's buy a single family residence, a nice neighborhood. The schools are good, brick homes on slab foundations. There's no need to get fancy to start this business, and do a more simple project first. The rehab, I like to see you do a rehab that's going to be $40,000 and less in rehab. I would not want to see the rookie go tackle the $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 rehab first. Those can get you. They can sting you a little bit. Start simple. Get your team around you, because you can't do all this yourself. You've got to have contractors. You got to have title company. You got to have insurance company. You got to have bookkeeper. And we can help you with that. We can refer you to a lot of that. But you want to start simple. Get your education. Go to industry meetings. Get educated and start simple. Single family residence would be the way to start.
That is a great advice. Mr. Gant, now tell me more about the numbers that people trying to buy a property needs to negotiate during the purchase. So they want to purchase $300,000 home. What they need to ask, like what's going to be the offer so they can make money?
Fernando, let me share with you three mathematical formulas that experienced investors are going to use out there. Two of them, you can probably read them in articles, and the third one is the S Gant special. Okay, the first formula, I talked earlier about ARV, after repaired value. That's a very important number. If you miss that number the wrong way, it's going to hurt you. After repaired value, that's what we're going to determine that house to be worth if you fix it up and get it back in perfect mint condition, or almost perfect, almost mint condition. So you take that ARV and you multiply that times 70%, and then you subtract the repairs. So ARV times 70% minus repairs. That's going to yield you somewhere around a 15% gross profit. Okay, the second formula is very similar. It's the same formula, but you substitute 70% for 65%. You take the ARV times 65% minus the repairs. That's going to yield you approximately a 20% gross profit. If just, ballpark numbers, everything will vary a little bit. So that's going to yield you a little bit better profit, a little bit higher profit. You're going to buy it a little bit less using that formula. All right. Now the third formula, the custom formula. I take the ARV and I subtract out six or seven things. I subtract out, and I do this longhand on my paperwork. I subtract out how much money is it going to cost me to buy this property? My title fees, my money fees, any other fees I'm going to have at the closing table. How much is it going to cost me to hold this property during the rehab and during the marketing period? That is a monthly summation times number of months I think I'm going to own it, of interest, taxes, insurance, utilities, yard maintenance, HOA, pool. And I add my monthly cost up, multiply it times anywhere 5 to 10 months I think I'm going to own this property. Next, third, is how much am I going to spend on paint, carpet, roof, AC, electrical, plumbing, my rehab? How much am I going to spend? All right, how much do I want to make? What's my desired profit that I want to make on this house? All right, I subtract that out. If you don't subtract that, you don't make any money. It's very important to not to forget to put that in there. Next thing I'm going to subtract is how much it's going to cost me to sell this house. When I go back to the title company, I'm going to have title fees, title policy, again, transfer fees, HOA, that type of thing. Last, I highly recommend everybody use a realtor. If you're not a realtor, hire one. Just about everybody in my office here are licensed agents. So we're able to list the property ourselves to save a little bit of commission. But the main reason we're agents is if you're with a really good broker, you're going to have some invaluable experience and training through your real estate broker, mainly to keep you out of trouble. So we subtract that out, and I subtract those things from my ARV. I look at my number. Then I look at my 70% number, and I look at my 65% number. So I've got three numbers. They're all going to be fairly close within reason. If one of the numbers is way away from the other two, you probably made a mistake with your calculator. So I evaluate, look at all three numbers. The number that I'm going to put the most weight in for my offers is my custom formula. And I do it every time. And I've bought right at 1,850 properties in my career. And you go to my files, go to my paperwork, you'll see these formulas written down in the file on every one of them.
Fascinating. Mr. Gant, thank you so much for your interview today. And I have a question. Do you have a final comment for our audience, something that you want to tell them?
Yeah, I do. This you'll find interesting. A lot of people listening may be in the situation you've never done this before, you're thinking about doing it. All right, let me tell you, I've been doing it 26 years. I have never met a real estate investor in my career that said this, I wish I would have started a little later. I wish I would have waited a few more years to do this. You never, ever hear a real estate investor say that, nor do you hear a real estate investor say this. In my career, I should have bought fewer houses. I really shouldn't have bought as many as I bought. You never hear that. You never hear them say, I wish I would have started later. You never hear them say, I wish I would have bought fewer houses. I wish I would have would have bought fewer flip houses, bought fewer rental. You don't hear that. So that right there should tell you something. If you're thinking about it, you just let's get educated, and next thing you got to do is commit and act. Thank you so much. Thank you, Fernando, for having me. I hope someone got a little something out of this that's going to help them in their real estate investing career. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was an honor to have you here as a hologram, and hopefully our viewers will enjoy this interview, find it interesting, and contact you, because it's easier, the process, to have a loan, and people just don't take that step because they don't know the process. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.